his first impressions count.
At Avis,
Hello. Hi, Panna.
Sound Jai Shri Krishna, Jai Janendra, Jai Swaminarayan Saira. Good evening to you all. I hope everybody is cooled down. It is very hot outside, and make sure you have loads and loads of water beside you. So, once again, good evening, everyone. And on behalf of GAA London, I'd like to warmly welcome you all to tonight's health and well-being presentation. Our focus this evening is on a very important and often overlooked area of our overall wellness, financial well being. As we all know, good health isn't just about physical and mental wellness. Financial stability and planning also plays a crucial role in our peace of mind and long-term security. And to do this, we are pleased to have with us Kamlesh Vara and Mahesh Solanki, a knowledgeable and experienced presenters who will guide us through key topics including understanding financial well-being, basics of estate planning, managing inheritance tax, and finally an open Q&A. So make sure you have your Q&As ready. Write your questions in the chat box if you don't want to face your presentation. On you can write down there and we can answer. Maheshji or Kamleshji will answer you during the sessions or after our sessions. So feel free to jot down your questions. Kamleshji, all yours.
Oh, thank you. I was going to ask Mahesh to introduce himself, but let me do my intro and then I'll hand over to Mahesh. So, my name's Kamlesh Farah. I've been a banker for over 20 years, working for investment banking. I've now moved on to financial advice for companies. So I help companies to restructure their assets, liabilities, help them with acquisitions, etc. So I've got a background in finance, and I like to share a little bit of my knowledge with you. But the person that has more knowledge is Mahesh. And Mahesh, if you can introduce yourself as well, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mahesh Solanki, and I have been a financial advisor for the last 35 years. So, I've got 35 years of experience in this field. I specialize in retirement planning, estate planning, insurance, pensions, mortgages, investments, commercial and residential loans, uh, literally everything to do with finance. And yeah, that's my forte. Um, Today, obviously, we are concentrating mainly on I think two or three subjects: inheritance tax planning, retirement planning, and we should take it that from there. Now, as this is quite a varied subject, everyone has got different ideas on their planning and whatnot. I was maybe suggesting is if I can have questions from the people around to see what kind of subjects issues they are experiencing. Obviously, not to divulge into your personal issues or whatnot, but just give a generic details, and then maybe we can elaborate more on it. That might give you a better understanding, if that is okay with you.
I think most that's a great way to do it. So let me do a little bit of an intro before we go into that. I think to Mahesh's point, I think if people have questions, this may be a more productive way of running this meeting and the topics being estate planning, inheritance tax. But let's think. Let's go back a little bit. So, but I mentioned, financial well-being. Why is that important to us? We're striving in GA to talk about people's well-being, health, mental, and this is a financial series. We all know that when people are thinking about money, and if money is a problem, it creates a stress situation for them, and stress often tends to lead to bad health. So this is why the topic is more about financial well-being. And before we go into that, and before we go into the Q&A, I just wanted to share some information with you. So the Office of National Statistics, which is a government body, is not telling us anything new, but what it tells us is that people are living to a much, much more older age. Better medical innovation, better health, etc., are living to an older age. The problem that they have and that we have as we get older, by older I mean people over the age of 50, their financial capability is not 100%. They know a little bit, but they don't know everything. So the government is worried by that. Okay. Secondly, if you look at the age brackets of 55 to 76, um, this group potentially struggle in retirement. They used to having lots of money when they're young and active. As they get over 55, their change in income, they sometimes struggle with coping with that. Okay. We're not going to be talking about that, but I'm just telling you how the government is looking at this. Okay. Thirdly, the financial world has moved, has made it more stressful for us. What's happened? Well, you and I and everybody are now tapping their cards in supermarkets. We're using cards more than cash. Many, many years ago, people used to know how much money they had with the cash that they had. That's not the case anymore. Over two-thirds of transactions are cards now. Secondly, devices. Everyone is using their phones, their watches, their computers to move money around. That was never around 20, 30 years ago. And it causes stress for people because they don't know how to use these devices. And actually, where it causes more stress is to do with security. Am I passing information over safely? Can I do this? Can I not do this? You know, our generation, my generation, wants to speak to someone. Unfortunately, the world has moved. The third thing that the ONS have come out with is women's the relationship of women in marital status or otherwise has changed. So now you get many more women who have not had financial training because typically their husbands used to look after the financial affairs. And now, they may have become widowed, they may have divorced, which is a very, common thing nowadays. So the financial education for women also has to be updated, and the government's worried about that. Okay. And all this is causing stress. Okay. And this is our aim is to try to help you a little bit. We can't help you in everything, but what I would say to you is the guidance we're going to give is going to be quite general. And if you want something specific, do reach out to Mahesh afterwards because no two cases are the same. Yeah. So with that, we're going to be covering two topics. Like Mahesh said, we're going to be covering estate planning and inheritance tax. I think a lot of people will are aware of what the rules are. But if you have any specific questions, why don't we open it up and see if Mesh can help you out? Mesh, that was just sort of a background
Yeah.
because
Thank you
people
very
know
much.
of
Great.
the
Yes.
changing dynamics.
Okay. Well, let's touch a bit on inheritance tax planning first of all. Uh, First of all, I think by now most of you are aware of the uh, the inheritance tax liabilities that goes with uh, our demise at the end, and when our estate passes on to our beneficiaries. At the present moment, the allowance is £325,000 per person. That's husband for 325,000, and the wife 325. On top of that, they have a further allowance of residential nil rate band allowance of 175,000 for each of them. But that there is a caveat to that is only available if the property that you live in is going to be passed on to your immediate children or adopted children. If it goes to anybody else, then that allowance is not available at all. The second caveat on that is if your estate is worth more than 2 million, then anything over and above 2 million, it's the resident nil rate band which they have offered will start tapering to whatever the amount is, to literally zero up to 2,300,000. So again, we got to be careful on that. So obviously, we have a lot of people who have got estate values of around about 1.5, 2 million or more. And they also have to start planning how to sort out, how to mitigate IST planning, how to get the best out of the allowance that they are offering us. And there are several ways of doing that. The, the ways that are available, first of all, if both husband and wife are in good health, and slightly younger age and whatnot, then there is a much more easier way to do it. If not, if they have a lot of cash around, then there is a different way of sorting it out, um, by way of investing and putting the amount in a trust. Now, there are only a certain type of trusts that are available for it. So again, the one I'm talking about would be, say, for example, if you have cash amount. First of all, let's have a look at the situation. Say your property is worth £1 million, and you are deciding to pass the property over to your children. Up to £1 million, there is going to be no inheritance tax liability on the property itself. Anything over and above in your estate, like cash or whatever, will be liable for inheritance tax of 40%. So, if anyone who has got cash, we'll say two, 300,000 or more, it will be in their interest for them to invest into a bond and have a discounted gift trust applied to it. And with that, they obviously lose the control on the capital of the funds, but they do have an access to regular income of up to 5% of the amount invested every year, tax free. The only time the tax liability would be is after 20 years, but by that time they might not be alive, so then there'll be no tax to pay. That is one way of mitigating inheritance tax if you have a large estate and there's a lot of cash involved in it. If you The other issue also is, most of our people, although they would have cash and whatnot, uh, they are quite apprehensive of passing on the funds over to the children because they will want to make sure that they use it for themselves. Then there is the other option, but that also depends on the person's health, is to take out a life insurance policy. It will be a joint life second death policy, and that will only be paid out at the after the second person has passed away. And the amount of cover would be, we should calculate roughly what would be the tax liability on it, add about another maybe 50% or so, and insure for that amount, to allow for inflation through the years. So, and if the children are well to do, and if they are able to contribute towards the premiums of it, then it will be in their interest, because the premiums they would pay would never amount to the tax they would be liable at the end of the day when they inherit the estate from the parents. So these are a couple of issues that we can look at. That's regarding inheritance tax planning. There are other ways of trusts and whatnot, but the other trusts and whatnot, everything depends on the person's situation and what kind of trust would be applicable for them. But those trusts are obviously all to do with the money you invest into a bond and how you want it to be distributed. So, but the most popular one is obviously the discounted gift trust. That's regarding inheritance tax planning. I wonder if there's any questions on this issue.
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple of people have put some questions in the chat. So I do encourage people to put questions in the chat if they're reluctant to say. So
Okay.
let's go through one of them, okay?
Okay.
Someone's asked the question, what's the best way to look at your main residence and passing on to adult children and trying to mitigate your inheritance tax. So again, so it's residents, adult children, and IHT, right?
Okay. Right. I presume the question is directed to the fact that the parents will be living in the house and they will want to pass the property over to their children.
Hold on a second. So the person that asked the question has got initial N. Is that what you meant by that, or did you mean it just generally that the adult will not be living in the house as well? Yeah. So the person says yes. So the parent will be living with the child.
Right. Well, unfortunately, that would not be regarded as passing on the estate, the property to the children, because if they are living in the property, the only way it can qualify for inheritance tax allowance is they they would have to then pay marketable rent to the children, and the children will have to pay tax on the rental income they receive, and that has to be documented properly, and it has to be produced to the inland revenue when the time comes. So uh, that that like I said, there is a possibility, but the situation is they will have to pay a rent to stay in their own property.
So, Mosh, can I sort of extend on this a little bit? Right. So, if the parent and the children are staying together, okay, and there's no passing of the residence to the child, but on death, the second, when the second adult dies, when the adult dies, not the child, um, as long as the house is left for that child, then will they benefit from
Now,
the £500,000 nil rate band?
yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the nil rate band is available for everyone, really.
Mm.
Like I said, so for example, your property up to £1 million is tax free anyway for
Yeah.
inheritance tax purposes, provided the property goes to the children.
Yeah. So the person that's asked the question, if the property is a value of £1 million or below, and you leave it to your child or to your grandchild, it's exempt from IHT.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. As long as that's not a problem at all, because it covers the allowance anyway.
Yeah.
It's what the issue is, if the property is worth more than that. And don't forget, we're talking about the property, not only the property, we're talking about the estate, the estate value. So the property may be £1 million, but then the estate value could be a lot more.
Yeah.
Personal cash, personal belongings, contents, and everything. You know.
Yeah. And
And don't forget, the estate is your worldwide assets, not just UK.
right, right. And if a parent wanted to gift their child a house, say they had two or three properties, and they wanted to gift their child a house, and they did it, I'm sort of thinking a little bit about the 7-year rule here. How would this work? How would this work?
Well, it's quite simple. They can give the house to the child. Literally uh, transfer the property into the child's name, provided they'll survive 7 years after gifting it. If they if they if they don't survive 7 years, then there's a tapering effect, and it's roughly about say in the next say if they die in the next 3 years, then they'll have to be about the inheritance tax would come down from 40 to 32%.
Yeah, yeah. And so of course when they pass that asset to their child, it has to be properly documented, and it has
Yes,
to be a
yes.
mark, it has
It
to be
has
a
to be
mark, a
not
mark.
only that, it has to be done. It doesn't have to be a marketable value. It has to be done as a gifted value, and but they would, I think, they will still have to pay a nominal stamp duty on it once it's transferred to them.
Yeah,
So it has to be done legally, conveyanced properly. You know.
yeah. The person's asked another question, which is just related to what is the nil rate band on residence? Could you just sort of repeat that? So I
Yes.
know you mentioned it, but could you just repeat that, please?
Okay, nil rate band is the initial amount which is allowed per person. This is £325,000. So the allowance is £325,000 for the husband and £325,000 for the spouse. When the husband passes away, the his allowance of 325 passes on to the spouse, So then her allowance becomes 625,000. But on top of that, there is, like I said, resident nil rate band, which is 175,000 pounds
Yeah.
each. So it totals around to £1 million.
Yeah. And just to, so the answer to the person's question is put it on the chat. The residence nil rate band is £175,000. They can have it.
Resident nil rate band, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then can I ask another question following on? So let's say there's only one adult left, one parent adult left. Can you still get the adult who's passed away their nil rate band allowance, even though they've passed away?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So once the one person has passed on, their allowance, both the nil rate band and the resident nil rate band, passes on to the spouse.
okay. All right. So look, I think that's very interesting. We covered a lot of issues there. So if we need to slow down, please let us know. But in essence, if the parents want to gift their child a house, a property, they can do that. It has to be like market value. It has to be gifted at market value. You need to have conveyancing. There may be stamp duty implications on your child, so watch out for that. As long as you last for more than 7 years and you live beyond, then there's no inheritance tax to pay on this. Okay.
Correct.
One thing to bear in mind when you pass your money to your child, think about your child's wealth because all our generations are becoming wealthier. So your child, chances are, their asset pool is growing. So when you give them £1 million house, that gets added to their estate.
That's
So
correct.
somewhere along the line,
They will have the same problem in future.
yeah, correct. But it can be done, and it's sort of
Oh yes. Yeah.
maybe you think it's the child's issue at that stage, and you've passed and you're resting, so it doesn't matter. The other thing is where if you're thinking of gifting a house to your child and you're wanting to stay in that house, slightly problematic because you have to pay a rent equivalent to make sure that the inheritance tax is not paid, right? Because a lot of people do that. They just give it to their children, live in the house, and actually, if it's found out, then there's a liability.
Yeah.
Okay.
The situation is called gift with reservation. So
Yeah.
you are gifting the property, but it's with reservation, so it's not allowable.
Yeah. Yeah. And as Mosh said, when you're gifting properties and fortunately or unfortunately, the property values are going up and up and up. So most people, their houses are worth on average, most probably a lot more than they used to be. And you're going to be hitting onto the £1 million threshold quite quickly. But also remember, you've got to think of your other assets as well, your cash, your furniture, and it's your worldwide assets. Stocks and shares as well. Someone's asked the question. That's
Right.
all it has to be included, right? So I think we covered a lot of topics, but through that one question. We've got another question, Mesh, and this is to do with trust, okay? Specifically with trust. And this is not to do with the cash bonds that you talked about or the life assurance. Someone has asked the question, is it better to manage large estates through trusts? So I think that what's brought that question on is when you said when you've got asset value over £2.3 million, you're pretty much going to attract 40% IHT. Now,
Yes.
of course, you can avoid that
Not
with
only
trust,
that,
but what
not
can you
only
talk?
that,
Go on.
if your estate value goes by 2.3 million, then you lose the resident nil rate band allowance. So that means that you have lost 175 times 2 for both husband and wife. It's gone. It's not allowable.
Mm,
So one has to be very careful about that. So if they want to try and make use of the resident nil rate band, and at the same time, so they have to make sure that their estate value is not more than 2 million. But why would they want to just sit on a estate value of 2 million and not do anything about it? It's better for them to start doing something about it and try and invest that fund into a bond or something, and at least get a regular income from it, but pass the capital on tax free to the beneficiaries. that would be a much more easier way to do it.
Yeah. So look, I think the thing with trusts, yes, I mean trusts are very, very useful vehicles for managing very, very large estates. And anybody wanting to do that, get proper professional advice. It will cost you. This
That's
advice will cost you thousands of pounds, but the chances
absolutely.
are it will save you thousands of pounds. And it's highly specialized. And there are a lot of companies out there willing to spend time with you to see if you should manage your estate in this way. And they'll give you that time for free, hoping that you will sort of sign up to a trust because to set up trust companies is expensive, to manage them annually, it's expensive. But what it does do, it does give you assurance that your estate is managed in the way that you want it to, i.e., cover school fees. It's some people call it blood management. Blood is not the right word. Bloodline, lie. So you can pass to your grandchildren because nowadays there's lots of marriages and divorces and intermarriages, and parents are quite keen on supporting their grandchildren, and the trust is a way of doing that. But again, it's very, very difficult to talk about this generally. You really need to seek
That's
specialist
correct.
advice.
Yes.
But I'm just going to ask the person, the initials are VB, it's Vinay. Vinay, question for you. Okay. So if you've got a large house, what a lot of people do is they downsize, and they move into smaller property and cash out, and that makes the estate more manageable. Is that something, is when you talk about high value homes, are you talking about, in excess of 2, 3, 4 million pounds, or, is downsizing an option for you?
Yeah, maybe I'll just reply on here. It's easier.
Yeah.
um, I think it's because we mentioned around the £1 million. So I'm in my 40s. I've got two younger kids, and like right, very quickly you're going to be hitting that £1 million sort of threshold. So I'm
Mm.
thinking, hold on a second. In about another 10 years, with assets and stuff that will accumulate, my own kids are going to be impacted. Is it worth even at this stage thinking, you know what, let's start planning now and moving my property into a trust and any of the assets that I inherit and so on, so forth down the line. I think you guys talked about it before, with the sort of passing through the parents down to myself and so on. So I guess it's a generic question, really, and I'm sure a lot of people in my 40s, 50s are going to be in the same problem. Should we also be thinking about inheritance tax now, and should we be sort of kind of, I guess, planning with things like trusts? I hope that's kind of clear enough.
Yeah, that's very, very clear. And look, I think the answer to your question, you should start planning uh, pretty much when you
Can
sort
I
of have.
answer that?
Yeah, yeah,
Can I
family commitments.
answer?
Yeah, go for it, Mesh. Go for
Okay,
it.
Vinay, you are an ideal example, a young family in the 40s and whatnot, and obviously you already are envisaging that your estate value will definitely go well over 1-2 million or more. If I was in your place, what I would do is I would take out a life insurance policy for, well, we can work out a figure, uh, joint life second death for you and your wife. Because you are young, the premiums will be so small that even in your lifetime, you will the amount that you pay on the policy will be nowhere near the liabilities that your children will have to incur at the end. And the the reason why I'm telling you about the life policy is one of the most cost effective way of mitigating inheritance tax as long as you are young and in good health, but not necessarily young. But if you're in good health and whatnot, then that would be the best way to do it. That way, you are in full control of your estate. You do what you want with your monies, and you are also comfortable to know that yes, when you pass on, the life policy will mature and will pay out the tax liability, and your estate will go tax free to your children.
Thank you
Does
very
that
much.
answer the question?
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
I think Vinay, when you're younger but 40s and working age and sort of pre-retirement, you can do a lot more planning, and it's advisable to do that planning. When you get to retirement age and you're sort of pulling on your pension, then lots of doors start closing for you in terms of planning. It becomes harder. And one thing that we found, and why are we doing this discussion about, financial planning and inheritance tax and estate planning? Indians as a community are very, very reluctant to open about their finances. And this is to their families, these are to their loved ones, right? Typically, the first people to find out about someone's assets, right? Well, there's two people. One is the lawyer, and two is the taxman. So Indian families have been very reluctant to open up. I'll give you the example of my grandfather, who was sort of opening up bank accounts left, right, and center, putting cash in there. When he died, no one knew the bank accounts were there, and we couldn't find them, right? So we are as a cultural thing, not only Gujaratis, Indians, Africans, Southeast Asians, we don't want to open up about our affairs. So if you can, it sort of may save your children and your estate a lot of money. I think Harish Bhai mentioned here, is it worth mentioning that when IHT has to be paid? Mahesh Bhai, if there's an IHT liability, when does an estate have to pay that to HRMC?
Okay. This is payable only on second death. On first death, there is no tax liability. There is no probate. Probate has to be done just as a formality, but there will be no IHT liability at that stage. On the second death, before getting the probate done, we have to first of all satisfy the inland revenue that your inheritance tax is paid up fully, and only once they give a certificate, only then they can get the probate done for the estate.
Yeah. Fantastic. And I've got a question here, which is from Dev, and the question is a family investment company more effective than a trust, or does it depend on the value of the estate? Just from my side, so this is out of my scope, unfortunately. Mesh, do you have any sort of
Sorry, I
suggestion
don't
on that?
understand. What do you mean, family investment company?
Yeah, Dev is asking, is a family investment company more effective than a trust, or does it depend on the value of an estate?
I don't understand the question at all.
Dev,
What do I mean by family investment company?
yeah.
It's just a way instead of using trusts, it's a vehicle to actually put money in, and then you can sort of invest in property, loan out to your
Oh,
family.
right. Now, the sorry, is it Dev? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dev. Okay. Whatever, wherever you invest the money and all that, the trust is a very, like I said, it's a very complex subject. But the 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 short and sweet of a trust is once you put anything in trust, you lose control of of your investment. That you must bear in mind, no matter whether it's family investment or whatever. But the moment you put anything in trust, that's the idea behind it, that you lose full control of your capital, and it's the trustees who are then the owners of the trust, and they would pass the estate on to the beneficiaries when the time comes.
Okay.
So whether it is a family investment company or whatever, it would still be liable for IST as is part of the estate.
Okay.
Okay.
And Mesh, Dev has raised another question relating to pensions now. And the question is, will pensions be subject to IHT post 2027? And this is most probably on the back of the autumn budget last year, when the rules were changed, and that becomes effective on pension pots being brought into the estate of a family. Do you know more about that?
Yes. First of all, I think just to give a background on this, up at the present moment, your pension fund Now, when I'm talking about pension fund, I'm not talking about any final salary scheme or superannuation schemes or not. I'm talking about your personal pension funds. That is uh, defined contributions. That's what it's what they call it. So that's your own personal pension funds. Now, up to now, the flexibility on the pension fund is has been so fantastic. Is that when the husband passes away, the spouse takes over his pension fund and use the fund as her own income or whatnot, and eventually when she passes away, the fund goes to the children and they can do what they want with it. Everything was tax free up to now. Now when I say tax free, means it's not just completely tax free. It is there is income tax to pay because as part is considered as your regular income. But when it passes on to the children, it would have gone IST free, so it would not be part of your estate. Now, the autumn statement, the chancellor has put a spanner in it, and she says now the pension fund passing on to the beneficiaries will be passed part of your inheritance tax. At the present moment, it is still under consultation. It has still not become the law yet, but it is earmarked to be in force in April 2027. Okay.
So that 40%, is that just on the income that's taken out of the pensions,
No,
not
no,
when the
no,
pension is
no, no.
transferred?
Um, when when I say when the pension fund passes on to the beneficiaries, mean the children,
Yeah.
whatever the value of the fund will be taken into account with the rest of your estate.
Okay.
Okay. Before, that was not the case. The value of your fund was totally exempt from any IST liability.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right. Any
Sorry,
other questions?
I was just saying, on the back of Dev's question, is there anything that can be done about that in anticipation of 2027, or is already set in, or is it the road?
Well, all I can say is if you have a large pot of pension pot, use it. Spend as much as you can. Go on cruises, whatever. No point in leaving it to the children because they'll have to pay tax on it anyway. And if they are not well to do, then yes, fine. Leave it to the children, and they would have to pay tax on it. But there are ways of mitigating it. Calculate that within your estate and get what I mentioned earlier, a life policy with joint life, second death, to the value of the approximate amount of the tax liability that they would incur, and that way they will at least get all the funds tax free.
Dev, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you so much. That's
Okay.
very helpful. Thank you. Will this meeting be recorded?
You're not the only person that's asked
Yeah,
this.
I saw a few people ask, so I just wanted to
Many
check.
people ask this. So look, we've started these webinars. This is our 6th week. Okay, so they're all available on YouTube on a recording.
Fabulous. Thank you.
We don't have
It's amazing what you guys are doing. So thank you so much.
No problems, no problems. And look, these are very common problems, and also we're hoping that the autumn statement and what was passed gets reversed in the future. So let's hope.
So. Let's
Let's
hope
hope
so,
so,
because
right?
Yeah,
that was
fingers
one of
crossed.
the best way of investing into investing into a pot which was going to be uh, exempt from IST, but unfortunately that was not going to be the case now.
Yeah. And Mosh, do you have any advice for people with pensions? Should they do they currently all stay out of the estate, or do they need to look at the circumstances of their pensions and who the beneficiaries are? Is there anything they need to look at today? Because I find that some people don't know what they have in their pension pot, who the beneficiaries are, and if there's going to be tax payable, because sometimes the pension stops after the first death, I understand, or sometimes it passes to a beneficiary. Is there any general advice you can give to our listeners?
Now, I am only going to talk about the personal pension plans, which is the defined contribution schemes. That means whatever contribution you put into the plan, and that plan grows up, that's called a personal pension plan. Okay. Now, in that one, those who have got plans which have been written maybe say 12 years ago or so, more than likely they would not have nominated the beneficiaries of where the fund is going to go once they pass on. So it is extremely important for them to look at those plans and make sure that they have nominated whoever the person is they want to the funds to go to. It obviously, if you're married, then it's going to go automatically go to the spouse. That's fine. But after that, if the spouse is already widowed and she has already received the husband's pension fund, then she has to make sure that she nominates the beneficiaries in her pension plan. Nothing to do with the will. There is no need to put the names in the will. It all goes into the pension plan itself. So that's when everyone has to really look at it and make sure that they have nominated the correct beneficiaries to go into the plan. If they don't do it, then the pension company would start taking their own discretion, and uh, they would then distribute it to, I cannot really say who they would, but they would distribute it to anyone who you have not any intention of passing the funds to. Okay.
Good, thank you. There's another question raised, and it's an interesting one, which is if someone's got stocks and shares in an ISA, in a wrapper today, worth about £200,000, is that exempt from IHT?
Unfortunately, not. No, the the ISA it's a very good vehicle that there is no income tax on it and there is no capital gains tax on it. But unfortunately, it does become part of your estate, and that would be liable for IHT, inheritance tax.
Thank you. So Satmesh has asked the question, life insurance, we've talked about it, life assurance. The premium increases with age. I think the answer is yes, but do you want to talk a little bit about that?
That is very, very true. Um, if we are doing a life insurance policy just to mitigate inheritance tax, then it would be better to go for whole of life policy, because we don't know when we're going to die. And in the old days, unfortunately, the whole of life policies incurred a review after 10 years and then every 5 years. But now they have got whole of life policies which are guaranteed. So once they underwrite you and offer you a premium, that premium remains for the rest of your life, as long as it's a guaranteed plan.
Again, advice is take it out as early as you can. It's a bit cheaper as long as you're in good health. It's relatively good value, and really, paying that premium can save you thousands and thousands of pounds. Yes, you pay an inheritance tax, but the assurance will cover more than cover that, and sort of negate the inheritance tax amount. So
Just to give you a ballpark figure,
mm,
the tax liability, compared to tax liability and the premium they would have paid in their lifetime, would be maybe one about 10 or 15% compared to what they would have to pay.
yeah,
Now, the other issue is which you find when taking out the life insurance policy is, as we all grow older, we retire, and then our income is reduced drastically. what do we do? How do we manage the premiums? Well, if everything depends on per every individual situation. If they have children who are working, and if they are able to afford paying the premiums for the parents, because it's in their interests to make sure that they don't pay any tax on whatever they're going to inherit in the end. Uh, it's That's one way of doing it, and that, in fact, in my experience with our community, our Indian community I'm talking about, is one of the most popular way of mitigating inheritance tax. And the reason being is most of them are not very keen on passing on their capital as long as they're alive. They don't mind what happens to it after they are gone, or not, don't mind. They don't mind it passing on to the beneficiaries after they are gone. But while they are there as a form of security, they prefer it to be theirs, and they would like to make sure that they are able to enjoy their capital as long as they're alive. So this is one of the best way of sorting it out.
Thank you. A lot of questions have come up. I want to try to cover the more
Okay.
generic grounds. I know people have asked for IHT on specific pensions. We're not going to go into that here because we don't know enough about the pension. But if you want to
So
mess,
it's the simple answer to that
yeah,
is
go on.
inheritance tax on IHT, I mean on pension fund,
Yeah.
is whatever the fund is that's going to be passed on to the beneficiaries will now attract inheritance tax. Now that means that whatever the value of the fund is, it will be put together with the rest of the estate.
Mm.
So it's not calculated separately. It's all put in together with the total estate which they will have to pay tax on.
Yeah.
So it's just a very simple calculation. So, but no one knows well, I mean, when I say no one knows, I mean the people who've got the pension plans, they will know what their fund value is anyway.
Yeah. So the question is quite specific. It was talking about LGPS pension schemes, and that. So this question came from Saga, or someone who signed up as Saga. So we can't comment on that because we don't know enough about the pension scheme. So
Exactly.
I think what Mesh has given is just a general feedback. So look,
That's right.
there's a question which I think is useful for everybody. What are the rules of gifting from parents to children? And this is general gifting. What's allowed, what's not allowed on a regular basis, and sort of falls outside of IHT mesh.
Right. Although the rule they have is that you can gift up to £3,000 a year, not to individually, the total amount of £3,000 a year to your children, tax free. And then there are small gifts like 250 or so, whatever. But that all really falls by the wayside. You can gift whatever you want to, as long as you have survived 7 years after gifting that amount. It could be £1 million, but as long as you have survived 7 years after gifting that amount, passes away from your estate completely.
Yeah, yeah. And what about small gifts, Mesh? You can what's a limit on small gifts that an individual can
Well,
make?
they say £3,000, but I mean, no one really takes any attention to that, because um, the only thing they would have to worry about is if they have died within 7 years, then they go to anything more than £3,000 would be liable for tax.
Yeah. So look, on the £3,000 rule, it's a total amount of gifting, not just to,
Yeah,
both per
total amount of
individual,
gifting,
total
not
amount.
to individuals. No.
Yeah, and individual and you're allowed a 1 year carry forward on this. So if you don't use that in 1 year, you're allowed to give a £6,000 gift the following year. Okay,
That's right. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
total. So it's worth noting that it could be beneficial. Now,
Mm.
on top of that, as your family gets older, you can give gifts for weddings, and that can be quite substantial. Most, do you know what the gifting amounts are for children, grandchildren, and Jennifer weddings? Because that's a good vehicle to be used.
Not offhand, really.
Okay, I'll come in. I'll help you here.
You
So
know.
for
Okay.
your child is £5,000.
Right.
Your
Right.
child's getting married, you can give £5,000 to your child. It's outside the IHT scheme. If it's a grandchild, you can give £2,500.
Okay.
And if it's for any person, so for the mother, some other family member, you're allowed to give £1,000 as a wedding gift. Okay. You can also take advantage of birthday and Christmas gifts, which again fall outside IHT. So there's little things. I know there's small amounts of money, but they all add up, and it's just easy. Someone asked the question, Mesh, how do we have to formalize these gifts? Do you have to document these, and how do we?
Well,
People are
it
quite.
is. It's really something that I have never ever come across myself. But the logical answer to that would be is, I think, as you as you grow older and whatnot, your lifespan is getting shorter and shorter, and this is where. So, say for example, if I want to give to my grandchildren or whatnot, and at my age and whatnot, I've got to be very careful that I make sure I survive 7 years after gifting that, because whatever amounts that we give, obviously the Inland Revenue is going to look at your bank statements and whatnot, and they will look at big amounts and whatnot. How did that amount, where did it go to, and they will want to find out what has happened to it. So, but like I said, if you survive 7 years, then there is no issue at all. So they will look at the record of 7 years.
Yeah, yeah. And one thing that people may be not aware of is, our communities are very often they sell their properties to their children under value. Property worth 500,000, they sell it to them, transfer it 300,000. The difference in value is considered to be a gift.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people sometimes do that and think that, oh, they've gone around the tax man. That's something to be aware of. Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean that's fine. The main thing they have to remember is they have to survive 7 years after doing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I'm going to go through another question, which is quite a technical question, actually. It's from Satmeshik, and it relates to what is your view on EBTs? And I'm guessing that's an employee trust for high net worths with regards to IHT.
I have not done.
Can you comment on those, Mesh?
Say it again.
Can you comment on
I've
that?
never come across that, so I would not be able to answer that.
Yeah.
EBT.
EBT. Satmesh, do you have one of those EBTs?
No, I don't have one, but I've been told by a trust company that that is uh, a form of mitigating IHT. The only thing is, Inland Revenue don't like EBTs,
Mm.
Employee Benefit Trust, simply because it had a history of uh, London stockbrokers, etc., abusing it for tax mitigation. So
Yeah.
Inland Revenue don't like it, but when used in a correct way, um, seems good for high net worth individuals for managing their IHT. So I wasn't sure whether what your views would be.
Yeah, look, you need to take specific advice, I think,
Yeah.
Satmesh. But my general knowledge is if you've got, it's a discretionary trust, and as long as it's properly set up, and the trustees are properly established and the beneficiaries are properly established, and you're in agreement with that, it's a good way to manage your financial affairs,
Yeah.
right?
I think for trusts like that, you would need to go to a proper trust specialist. They would only deal with trusts, various type of trusts. That's not the trust I look at normally. The gift, the discounted gift trust, is actually related to an investment, not anything else. So for anything else, I think they would have to go to a trust specialist for that.
Yeah. And look, I think most companies that give you that will offer you a financial advisor and cover the cost of that, in my experience. Okay.
Hmm. Right.
So look at that because it is highly specialized.
Mm.
Banu's asked the question: is gifting of £3,000 per child or in total? And that's
No,
in total.
total.
Banu. There's a question here about the bond. You mentioned cash bond before, Mahesh. The question is, how does the bond work, and is there any limit on the investment?
Right. No, the bond which I would recommend would be what they call an investment bond, and it's obviously it's an insurance investment bond linked with insurance, and you would have a choice of but nearly 400, 500 different funds to invest in, and the bond would can be any amount. Minimum, I think minimum is 50,000 plus to whatever amount you want. It makes no difference. And how you could mitigate the inheritance tax on it is you put that bond in what they call a discounted gift trust. And what will happen there is that the bond it goes that the capital goes out of your estate completely, but you would have access to 5% of the fund every year as an income tax free for yourself. And the tax liability will only be payable after 20 years, but more than likely, the chances of that happening are very negligible.
And sorry, is that
Makes sense?
5% of the income you can pull out?
No. 5% of the value of the fund.
Oh, I see. So if you got £100,000, you can pull out 5K. Yeah. If you
That's right.
got 500,000, then you can pull out 25K a year, no problem.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Got a
So, say for
question.
example, if that five you invested say 500,000, and in a year's time it has gone up to say 600,000, then it's actually 5% of the value of the fund. So 600,000, like that. If the fund has gone down, then
Yeah.
obviously it's
Yeah.
pro rata.
Yeah. And these bonds are invested in the stock market, or just in,
They are invested in different stocks. Yes,
right?
yes, yeah.
Can you choose? Can you choose the
Yes,
investment?
like I said, you have a choice about nearly 4 to 500 funds available, and you can chop and change whenever you want.
Yeah. And in your experience, you have to pay a fee for these bonds, annual fee. Does it still surpass the
Yeah, so
savings you make?
every bond will incur their management fee or whatever,
Yeah.
uh, uh, and various other small fees. But even with those, the fees that you pay, the growth on it will be quite substantial for you to be able to live comfortably on the income itself. And then you also have the satisfaction that it's not going to be fall part of your estate.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So look, there've been lots of questions that come through, and we've sort of reached the hour. I really want to stick to the hour if we can, or more or less. So some of the questions on trust, they're quite specific, and they're quite um, um, they're specific, but they're specific to individuals, and everyone's circumstances are different. So it's difficult to answer, how much total assets you need to open a trust account, etc. I would suggest seek advice. Mahesh knows of people that can point
That's
you in the
right.
direction of. There's lots of people that will advise you. So please, on trust questions, let's sort of park that and seek other advice. Me and Mahesh can point you in the direction of people if you'd like to speak to them. But what I would
I
like to
do have
finish off.
colleagues who are specializing in trust, so I can pass them on to them, no problem.
Thank you. The other point is in terms of the presentation, it's available on YouTube and we'll make that available to people. Please sign up to the GAA community chat. Reach out to Bana. She'll give you some details and it's a WhatsApp chat. We post the YouTube videos on there so you can access them. But what I want to do is finish off on one question which was raised, which is to do with how do you treat payments to charities and IHT, Mesh? And because we're a charity and GA is a charity, and I suspect this person Shobna wants to give money to GA at some stage on passing, will she be paying tax on that?
Yeah, as long as the money goes to a registered charity, then instead of 40% uh, um, tax liability, your tax liability goes down to 36%.
And it doesn't matter how much you give to the
Doesn't
charity?
matter.
Okay, so that's worth thinking about, right, guys? So give some money to charity, it reduces you get a 4% reduction in your IHT amount straight away, which is quite substantial. And if you had an estate, can you pay an extra, let's say you had an estate of 2.3 million, I'm making this up, and you gave £300,000 to charity, would that decrease the value of your estate and it becomes more manageable? Okay,
That's
so there's
correct.
other ways to-
Yes, yes.
okay, great.
Yeah, so
Guys,
say straight away, then you will qualify for the resident nil rate band.
yeah. So look, I think we've covered a lot of ground and it's quite technical. What I did want to say to people, we've got another session next week. We wanted to talk about estate planning today, and we didn't really get a chance to talk about that because we had so many nice topics to talk about. So next week, what Mahesh and I will most probably do is take up from where we left off, talk a little bit about estate planning, what's estate planning relative to IHT planning, and then talk a little bit about powers of attorney and wills. Our biggest concern here is that with wills, less than 50% of the adult population in the UK have wills. Yeah, it's not problematic, but it can make things a bit complicated. We're going to talk a little bit about that next week. If there's any other topics you'd like us to discuss, please let us know. But we'll look at estate planning. We'll talk a little bit about wills, and we'll talk a little bit about powers of attorney, which are very, very important. We might even touch upon bereavement planning as well if we have time. Yeah,
Can we not have a slideshow with this?
There's no slideshow with them, I'm afraid.
Oh.
There's a
So it's easier to like all the big figures and this to try to remember.
Okay. Well, look, my
simple one, like what you do before for the other things, just to highlight this, that, and
okay. Well, let's have a think about that. I think it's a good point. We'll
Sorry, what was,
have a
I
think.
missed that.
No, I mean, not too much, just like big figures and examples and things, so we can work ourselves, looking at the slideshow and try to do our financial bit ourselves in a way.
Yeah, so basically things like the nil rate band.
Nil rate.
What is it? What is a gift
Yeah.
allowance? What can you give? Can we just sort of put it on a piece of paper?
What you said, and the 7 years and
Yeah.
things like that, so we can remember in a way.
Yeah. And look, if anyone
this was really good, but it was a bit too much.
Was it a bit too much?
But it was very good.
Did you think we moved a bit too quickly with them? Did we what the
what Maespa was saying, and you try to work it out, and you're going to someone else, and you can't understand that way. You see, but if it was a slideshow, you had figures, then you could just quick glance at it, and if you can, if not, I mean, this was.
And look, my advice is, I mentioned before that typically, it's in our culture not to talk to people about money, including our family, our wives and our children. Right? And you will save yourself lots of money by speaking to an advisor. So, please reach out to someone like Mahesh.
Understand.
Good. We'll try to put this in a summary format. If you're lost, do go to the government.uk site. It's nicely laid out there.
Right.
But we will try to put something out for sure. Okay.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or questions? No.
No, I'd like to now finish off. So, Mahesh Bhai and Kamlesh, what would you say? What common mistakes do people make in financial or estate planning that can be easily avoided? That's my last question.
The short and sweet answer is procrastination. Most of us have the same attitude. Oh, we'll do it later. We'll do it later.
Tomorrow
and by the time we get on doing it, it's too late. Either our health has deteriorated or other issues have come up. So this thing has to be done literally. It's not just something that's to be done for any elderly people, but youngsters, anyone after the age of 40, they must start thinking about inheritance tax planning and estate planning from the beginning.
Yeah. So like I said, tomorrow never comes, so we must act
Exactly.
now. Act
That's
now.
right.
Yes. So I must say now, thank you so much, Kamlesh and Mahesh Bhai, for an insightful and practical presentation we've had today. We have both complex topics like estate planning and inheritance tax much clearer, and we are very sure many of us are walking away with a valuable takeaways. So financial well-being is often not spoken about enough in our communities. So sessions like these are not just informative but empowering. It's helping us to make informed decisions for ourselves and our families. So, a big thank you to you both and everyone who joined us in this evening. Your presence and engagements what make these sessions meaningful. We do encourage you to share this information with friends and family. And if you'd like to see more sessions like these, please do let us know, as Kamlesh Bhai said. So, on behalf of GAA London, we wish you to continued health, happiness, and financial peace of mind. Thank you all. Take care. And somebody did ask for the link for YouTube, which I did put it in the chat. And you can see Mahesh Bai's contact number behind me. And also, I will put it in our links in our groups. Thank you very much, both of you guys. Have
Thank
a
you.
Thank you,
good
Pranav.
night.
Thank,
Thanks,
And
everyone.
Shubhratri to everybody. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Good
Thank you.
thank
night.
you. Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next week, same time, same link, and with more subjects. But as
Thank you.
Kamlesh and Mahesh Bhai said, we got one more session with him to next week. Thank you all. Take care.